All right, howdy everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Meetup Live. The topic today is we're going to be talking to Andy Saldaña about building tech in a changing world. I want to start by introducing myself briefly. My name is Brian Guthrie. I'm the VP of Engineering here at Meetup. But my role here today really is to speak to Andy and get his sense of how the tech landscape is changing and what we can do to come together in this moment, and what his organization is doing to bring us together in this moment. So thank you so much, Andy, for joining us here today. Do you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background?
Of course. Thank you for having me. My name is Andy Saldaña. I'm the Executive Director of New York Tech Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization that works to create a connected, equitable, and accessible tech ecosystem here in New York City. We're most famous for our meetup event, the New York Tech Meetup, where we showcase amazing technologies to an audience of technologists every month. It's been going for a very long time, and it's has over 60,000 members. In addition to the New York Tech Alliance, I also am a co-founder of an organization called Queer Tech in Montreal, and that is really the mission is to queer the tech ecosystem across Canada.
That's super cool. I just remembered, I think we have an introductory slide here, so I just want to pause for a second and let folks know. We are being recorded here. You all won't appear in the video, but I will and Andy will. We'll see how much we enjoy that later. Your audio will be muted during the event, but if you have questions, and I hope you do, submit your questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We have a couple of folks who are looking at those questions, and we'll be selecting some for me to pass in Andy's direction. Yeah, I think that's the guidelines we have here. And just here's sort of our brief agenda, right? So we're going to pause, or we have paused for a minute just to do introductions. We heard a little bit about Andy. We're going to kick this off with sort of a longer chat with Andy, and then move into that Q&A section at the end. This is my first time doing one of these things. I raised my hand and volunteered last week, not knowing or expecting how popular the event was going to be. So I'm so honored and overawed to see everyone here today. Please bear with us while I get my sea legs and we kick this thing off. So let's start then with sort of, Andy, your background. You have the largest tech group in all of Meetup. How'd that happen?
Yeah, I think part of it is it's been happening for a very, very long time. So it was founded in 2004, and it was actually founded by Scott Heiferman, the founder of Meetup. And it started as a opportunity for him to test the Meetup platform, as well as to find other founders who were creating technology in New York City at that time. So that's probably one thing, is that it's been around for a very, very long time. And then it's really, I think, the magic of the event. The event itself is really about showing and telling technology, and it's gained a lot of popularity. It was one of the first tech events in New York City that really brought founders together on a monthly basis, and over the years just grew into this amazing event, a monthly event that would happen at Skirball Auditorium. When I joined in 2013, it had already, New York Tech Meetup, the Meetup had already become a nonprofit organization. We were doing our monthly Meetup event at Skirball Auditorium. We were, I think, right around 12,000 Meetup members in 2013, 13,000. And it was just amazing to see that we could get 1,000 people in the auditorium every month. And tickets would sell out within 5 minutes. And it was really quite an experience to be a part of during that time. The community at that time in New York City was a little bit smaller, a little bit not as mature. It was still at the early stages, and really growing quickly. So I think all of those things really added to the success of the group itself. You know, I've seen it grow from about 12,000 members to over 60,000 members now. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of programming that we're putting on, the connections that we're creating, beyond just the meetup, and on the nonprofit side, just the programs and activities that we're continuing to push forward for the New York Tech ecosystem. It's definitely a place where people come when they're new to the ecosystem. It's definitely a place where people come to see new technologies. And so all of those things, again, really have added to the success of the meetup over time. Our events are no longer at that 1,000-member event scale every month, but they are still very quality. We average about 200 people when we're doing in real life events. Virtually, we're about 150 every month. So it's really still a quite connected program, and still a really amazing audience. And the community continues to surprise me every month.
It's an unbelievable community, and I remember those scoreball events when I first moved to New York. I think my boss at the time, she says, "You got to come with me. You got to see this thing," and the energy was absolutely amazing. Gosh, so that's, I mean, that is a really large group, and it can be really tough to build community out of groups that size. How have you maintained community over the years? How's it changed and evolved?
I think a lot of it is more informational. So we've gone from a very practical community building to more informational dissemination and connections through the resources and platforms that we've built as an organization, in addition to the meetup. So I think we continue to be a touch point. And I think that is what is really magical for us as an organization and as a meetup group, is that when technologists have come through in the past to introduce their products to the ecosystem, they remember us when they're either relaunching a feature or launching a feature, building something new that they want to show off to the community, or have left their previous venture, starting something new, and are starting the cycle all over again. They remember the New York Tech Meetup as that stage and that place. And I think that us keeping that value of being a show and tell type event, where we don't focus on the business model, we don't focus on the achievable market size. We really focus on the tech and the product and the founders themselves, has really led to the success and the continued success of the meetup overall. And continues we continue to thread that piece of community as much as possible through all of our programming. In addition to the meetup, the Alliance runs a number of different programs that support founders and entrepreneurs, that support students that are currently in university and high school, and job seekers as well. So our programs expand beyond just the meetup itself, to help support all facets of the tech ecosystem. And I think that all of that has helped us maintain and build a really strong connected community.
I want to pause for a minute and shout out all the folks joining the chat from all over the world. This is so cool to see, and something that's really special about these live events. I saw a couple of people down there joining from Bangalore and from Australia, both places near and dear to my heart. So thank you all for dialing in from all over the world today. So sort of a little bit about the community aspect in New York Tech Meetup. One of the things that I think makes it so special and almost unique amongst tech meetups, at least in the New York ecosystem, is that it isn't technology specific, it isn't language specific. It's intentionally, very inclusive. How do you integrate with the tech community? How does that help build your relationship with the tech community? How does it change the way you interact with folks?
Yeah, I think it's given me quite an education, a broad education in the different types of technologies that exist within the ecosystem. When I started again in 2013, a little bit about my background is I am not a technologist, right? Like, I'm not a traditionally trained technologist. I came from the event producing side. I was managing large trade shows and conferences that were tech focused. So Interops, Black Hat USA, Web 2.0 type conferences. And so I was exposed to it, but I really didn't understand what the startup community was. I didn't quite understand all the different aspects of the technology ecosystem. And when I started, I learned really quickly all of the different things that make up the tech ecosystem. The fact that there are so many developer languages, the fact that there's so many different types of technology, hardware, software, Internet of Things, blockchain, it was a lot of information to absorb. And I think the fact that our meetup itself really didn't focus on any one particular vertical or any one particular technology, allowed me the opportunity to learn and educate myself across all of those things and all of the industries that are, are very strong in New York City. And I think that's also what makes New York a very special place to build new technology, is there's so many industries here. And so I think that to that point, we, at the beginning, there wasn't enough technologists to really specialize when the meetup started. And so then I think when we got to the point where we could potentially pick a certain technology and create all of our programming around that, we decided to keep it very agnostic and open so that we could see the best of the best from across the industry showcase and give them the opportunities to showcase to this audience. And I think that, that has really made the community very special, right? Like we support all of the different types of tech meetups. We support all of the different organizations that are focusing on specific communities or types of technology, or the hardware meetup, the Ruby on Rails meetup. I've been to all of those meetups. I've gotten to meet a lot of those meetup organizers, and it's really quite interesting to see how we get to act as a little bit of that nexus to bring them all together and to kind of disseminate as much of the information to and from each other as much as possible, and that's our goal, is to create as much access within the ecosystem as possible so that we all understand what this ecosystem of New York City tech is,
I was going to ask how that inclusivity sort of changes the nature of the community that you attract and the folks that you're able to bring into the community. And it sounds like that's a part of it, right? That you see yourself as that nexus, as that way of blending or melding different perspectives and different technologies into a place where they can all get discussed and all get focus.
Exactly, and that goes beyond just the diversity of technology. It goes to the diversity of peoples, the diversity of cultures and communities, and all of the organizations that make up all of the magic that makes New York New York. We want to encompass as a meetup that reflects the city.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened not that long ago was that New York Tech Meetup merged with the New York Tech Council. Can you speak a little bit about that? How did that come about, and what's the organization been like since then?
Yeah, of course. So a little bit of history. Again, the Meetup group, founded by Scott Heiferman, 2004. In 2011, he and a couple of the regular organizers decided to create an official board and an official organization. So we became a 501c6 nonprofit organization, which is basically a trade member organization, industry organization, to support the industry here in New York City. That happened in 2011. We experienced great success all the way through there, 2011 to 2016, and there were starting to pop up all of these sister organizations and very specific tech organizations around the city as well. One of them that was in existence prior and also changing and morphing was the New York Tech Council. Very similar organization, 501c6, it's meant to be kind of a trade member organization for New York City tech. And so as we were always working in parallel, and we always worked very well with that organization. And as time moved on, we realized that our missions were getting more and more aligned with each other. And so in 2016, both boards decided to come together, create a merged organization, rename it the New York Tech Alliance, with this idea that we would encompass everything from the startups and entrepreneurships and the individuals from the New York Tech Meetup side to the enterprise companies and the more traditional technologists from the New York Tech Council side. And so now the New York Tech Alliance has a broad reach across the entire tech ecosystem, representing both the individual entrepreneurs and students to partner companies that are large reaching enterprise tech companies as well.
So I want to switch gears slightly to the topic that we've outlined today, which is sort of the tech in a changing world piece. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how your approach to building community and the companies or the projects that you feature as part of the meetup have changed during for lack of a better word, the sort of the COVID-19 era, you know, what are the challenges in building community right now, and how has it changed the way that you approach the work of organizing your community?
Absolutely. I think, you know, the obvious challenge is the connectedness, the ability to be in the same room with with like-minded people, to share a concept, to experience an experience, right? And so translating that into a virtual digital setting is a challenge, and trying to create that same magic. I've been lucky enough to, you know, through my work, be exposed to a lot of very digital platforms, even pre-COVID. When I get pitched a lot of different apps and a lot of different technology, and so I'm lucky in that way that when COVID hit, I had a huge arsenal to pull from to translate our programs into a digital setting. You know, I was already familiar with Zoom. And having digital meetings through Zoom. I was already familiar with platforms like Hio Social to create better networking opportunities at real live events. I was shown this product called Remo.co that really translates live stage focused events into a digital platform. There's, you know, Shindig, and there's a ton more that just were already in existence, and then at the onset of COVID, just you know, exploded onto the scene. And I have to say that getting familiar with that tech and being put at ease with being able to experiment with things really allowed for me to play around and figure out, like, what is the event that I'm hosting, what is the goal, who's the audience, and what platform is going to best support that, and realizing that there's not one platform that's going to support every program that you have fully. And so I think just having a little, you know, that comprehensive event background, and the ease of technology and the familiarity with some of the technology that existed really allowed for me to translate our programs into a digital setting. And I think that that's one of the first keys in creating that constant feel of community at the center of what you're doing, right? Like gathering people in the room is what we do as meetup organizers. Getting people to show up is what we do as meetup organizers. So how do you do that in a digital way? You have to create the compelling stories. You have to create compelling content. You have to make sure that the programs that you're putting together are in line with what the community wants at that moment. And so when we started doing translating the New York Tech Meetup specifically into that, Remo.co is the platform that we decided on, because one of the biggest pieces of the meetup is the networking opportunity that exists, the serendipitous networking opportunity that exists. And that platform, I felt, really translated that networking opportunity the best that I had seen. And so that's another way that we continue to push forward on creating and maintaining this sense of community. And then selecting the demoers that I was showcasing as well. You know, when everybody is thinking about COVID, and we as technologists are trying to figure out what are we doing to solve this problem and to help our communities address this problem, you know, we naturally tend to look for the solutions that are going to answer that. And, you know, being in New York, we are at this hub of amazing technologists that were either pivoting or creating technology really quickly to support the COVID response. And so we shifted the types of projects and products that we were seeing to be COVID related over the first couple of months. And then as we continue to showcase new technologies, and COVID becoming such an ingrained part of our new existence, we're seeing that even those companies that were not focused on COVID issues were pivoting and creating features or aspects to support the COVID ecosystem. And, you know, that is also interesting to see, and has changed how I look at technology, because now I ask that question, right? Like, well, what are you doing in this situation? And in addition to that, now it's also, you know, is this in line with promoting and creating diversity? with promoting and creating access. So now we're looking at it through a double lens of the twin pandemics that are happening, and understanding how technology is being influenced by that. So yes, it's really very much influenced how I'm looking at the technology that we're selecting.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, speaking of companies pivoting that direction, it was certainly a bit of a scramble for us. You know, I think that the realization that this thing was going to be around for a while hit us like a freight train, and we had to decide as Meetup. You know, our traditionally we've felt very strongly about the value of, you know, gathering together in physical spaces, sort of the element of human contact. But when we're not in a place where we can encourage people to do that safely, how do we change and pivot as a platform? So it's been fascinating to see that ripple sort of through the whole tech industry all over the world.
Yeah, it's really quite, and just the sophistication of programming that's coming out again. To see that pause happen, to see the first couple of Zoom experiences and Zoom events compared to where they are now. I was just attending the Lesbians Who Tech conference. That's a week-long conference this week, Pride and the virtual Pride event, and it's a week-long amazing roster and agenda of speakers, and how sophisticated that program is just amazing. Like, I aspire to have my events be that sophisticated. So now I have a new bar to reach after seeing
and that's
happen.
That's a wonderful group too. I love Lesbians Who Tech. I think they do some awesome work.
Yeah, Leanne is a phenomenal person, and I've been a big fan for years, and lucky enough to be connected to her in a strong way.
Yeah. You and I talked about this a little bit, you know, beforehand, but I thought you gave a really interesting but a really thoughtful answer. So I was hoping you could touch on it briefly. I was curious a little bit as to how the more recent very welcome and overdue resurgence of political support for Black Lives Matter and the protests in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. I was wondering how or whether that's changed your group's approach and what you're doing differently, or you know, how you frame that for your particular group.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the events that have happened recently are I'm really impressed with the reaction of communities across the United States and the world, engaging and starting to educate themselves in a way that I haven't seen before. You know, and it's all, it hit me. I was deeply impacted by it personally. I had a really strong emotional response to it. It took me about a week and a half to recover from a lot of it. I found myself in a state of shock after the George Floyd incident happened, and you know, already in a super anxious time, being at home with a ton of additional uncertainty wafting about, and it just really pushed me harder to continue the work that we're doing. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion has been at the center and forefront of the New York Tech Alliance for a very long time, and I know that what the power of diversity is from my own experience, and it's why, you know, I co-founded an organization that focuses on queer people in tech, so that we can increase that exposure and that representation across the board. So it's something that I've been navigating for a very long time, and each year I learn so much, right? Like, my education continues, my activism increases, my what I want to do personally becomes more and more. And I've been lucky enough to be part of an organization and a meetup group that values that same equity, that same accessibility, that same you know, value in diversity and inclusion. And I've worked really hard to do the best that I can to make sure that when we are programming for the monthly meetup, when we are programming for our panel conversations, that we are doing so with a lens that represents New York. Our goal is to make the tech ecosystem in New York the same representation that the city as a whole is. Like, there should be no barriers to entry. There should be no access gap. There should be no digital divide. And that all really drives the work that we do at the organization and the work that I do personally when we're organizing and creating programs. It's hard. It's really hard work, and we sometimes and often don't hit it 100%. And I've learned that you can't always be at 100%, and that's okay, as long as you are really pushing this forward, driving it, living it, believing it. It's something that will take effect. And I think you and I were talking about this, and you know, I struggle with specifically calling out the work that we're doing around DEI, because I don't want it to be a call out. I just want it to be part of my everyday. And it is a part of my everyday, but I think it's also important for us at this moment to stand up and talk about it and raise the questions and shine the light on the issues that have been facing. When I started in 2013, I was new to New York. I was new to the startup scene. I was new to tech, and I felt so alone. And I went to my first New York Tech Meetup at Skirball Auditorium, not being hired, applying for the job, walking in and going, oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable here. It's you know, I don't see the same types of people that I would consider myself here. And so when I got hired, it is one of the first things that I asked the then executive director about, and she agreed, you know. And so it was amazing to get mentorship from someone as powerful as in her views as Jessica Lawrence Quinn was at that time, pushing for more women in tech, and allowing me the space to learn and push for the things that I needed to push for. I joined every meetup group that I could find. Latinos in tech, New York Tech Latinas. I joined, you know, Lesbians Who Tech Meetup. I joined the Start Out Meetup. I joined, you know, Out in Tech. I got asked to take over the Gay Tech in New York Meetup and turn that quickly into the Queer Tech. I wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. And so just Meetup was a very important tool for me personally to educate myself, to learn as much as I could, to find the people in my community to give me the strength to continue to do the work that I wanted to do and accomplish. And I think that is really, I know that was a very, very long-winded answer, but it's just a lot that I've been thinking about over the last, you know, couple of months and weeks. And we've been talking about this for so long, and it's work that you do every day in your life as a person of color, as a queer person. And it's great to finally see what I feel is a turn in the tide and a light bulb go off to so many that were oblivious before. And so I'm hopeful that it will continue. I'm hopeful that we can continue to create programming that is open and accessible. We've done programs for a long time, the Women's Demo Night, Developing Pride, which is this Tuesday, check it out. We just launched New York Tech Latinas, also happening on Tuesday morning. You know, we just did an Immigrant Founder Night, which was really important and amazing in June in celebration of Immigrant Heritage Month. We're planning a accessibility, disability meetup in September. I feel like it's our job to give the voice and the stage to people who normally don't have that access, and making sure that the broader tech ecosystem sees that representation overall.
Wow, that was more than I could ever hope for in terms of the breadth and thoughtfulness of that answer. Thank you so much for leading us through that, and thank you for including that and making that part of your mission. I think it's part of what makes the New York Tech community special? Is the focus on inclusivity and on bringing more people into the tech conversation? Actually, I have a question here that I'd love to pass in your direction.
Mm-hmm.
An anonymous person asked the job for tech markets is expanding. Do you have any perspective on what types of jobs in tech are good entry points for folks who maybe don't come from that background but find themselves in need of a gig in the current situation and want to expand or switch careers into tech?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many. I mean, so there. We could go on for a whole hour on that topic itself. But there's when I'm speaking to groups of students, or when I'm talking to people who ask me that question from a personal point of view, I have to ask them what their background is, right? Like, what is their lived experience? What is their life experience? What is their education? What are they wanting? What is their goals? And their, where do they want to be? And all of that really will influence my answer. But most of the time it's generally like, well, what have you been doing before, and how can you do that for a tech company? Or what is the type of tech that you want to be involved with, and then look for the entry points that are in and around that type of technology. So for example, to give some concrete answers here, if somebody is coming with a little bit of technical knowledge, and they may have done a boot camp or two, a course or two, have taught themselves how to code using many of the online platforms, I would recommend them volunteering to nonprofits that need help or technical assistance to get that experience and build their resume, to do and build their own projects. I tell students that all the time: the bigger your portfolio is when you go in for an interview, the better. And if you don't have a GitHub repository to show, then you're not going to get that interview. People want to see what the work is. So that's
great advice.
Very technical focused jobs. For people who are not technical focused, the tech industry is so great in that aspect, because you can come in as a marketing person, a junior marketing person, and learn all about the technology that you're going to be working on. And it's really the key to entering the tech workforce is the ability to continue to learn. You need to have the drive to continue to learn, to continue to educate yourself, to absorb as much content as you possibly can about whatever the topic is, whether it's through podcasts or articles or whatnot. I personally am not the best reader. I am dyslexic, and I tend to, it takes me forever to read and digest information, but I can listen to podcast after podcast after podcast, and podcasts have saved my life as far as education and knowledge. There's so much rich information, both on the internet and, in real life through other friends. I tend to find very intelligent friends and drain them for information so that I can learn about the topic. But I think there's such a breadth of opportunities that exist within the tech industry. You just have to understand, like, what is it that you want to accomplish? Where do you want to be? How do you get there? What are the steps to get there? It's different for every position. And then what is your lived experience? What do you have in your background, in your life, that can translate into tangible skills for that position? I know that was another long-winded answer, but quickly, I always talk about my aunt who made tamales out of her house. And she did that for, 50 years, and had a tamale empire across Houston, and never really, opened up a storefront or did anything. And it provided for her and her life. And it wasn't until I started this job and started seeing these entrepreneurs create their companies and the work that they were doing, I was like, my aunt was doing all of that. And I learned a lot of that from her. And I learned a lot of that from my mom, when she would throw family parties and have to organize this huge event. And I didn't realize that that's where a lot of my event planner skills came from, and it really took, you really need to look at what your lived experience is. What skills do you possess, and how do you translate it into tangible work skills?
I think it's a great answer, and a number of really practical tips in there. I like to talk about my mom, who, as a single mother, she responded to a newspaper ad for an insurance company who would hire people who could pass a math test, and she became a COBOL programmer, and then eventually went into databases. That's a tough one to replicate, but she was able to leverage sort of her lived experience, and that spoke to skills that she had in her past that she was able to use to provide for myself and for her family more effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I know a number of QA engineers that started off as just QA testers, and
Yeah,
on the job taught themselves all about what that means, and how to, and the skills, and what sets them apart from others is that they had this hunger to continue to learn, and they were not
absolutely.
afraid of learning those skills.
Yeah. I have a question from Ray here, who's curious about online meetups specifically. How do you format them? Could you give us sort of a sample agenda and a flow for your meetups?
Yeah, it really depends on the type of meetup it is. There's, we run, I like to say, three different types of programs, right? One is the traditional meetup. We're trying to get as many people in the room, doing a stage presentation and flow. The other is a panel conversation around an educational topic, very traditional panel conversations. And the third is a very small, intimate gathering of people, like no more than 20 people. And so, those were our programs in real life, and so translating those into a digital experience is different for each type, right? For the meetup itself, for the New York Tech Meetup, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question really quickly?
Sure. Yeah, it was about the sort of format and agenda for an online meetup.
Right. So for the New York Tech Meetup itself, we mirror exactly what we do in real life. There's a little bit of networking up front, about an hour and a half of actual demo presentations, and then we always end. I took this from Leanne at Lesbians in Tech, and it's always been a part. This ask and offer kind of thing has always been a piece of what has made New York Tech Meetup continue to be a place where people come. Is I give anybody in the audience an opportunity to make their ask and offer at the end of the event. So it's networking, programs, and then ask and offer. I find that really keeps people engaged, and people who want to make the ask will stay because they want to make their ask and offer to the audience. And it's really translated very well. And then we always end with additional networking. In the digital space, not as many people stay, but that's understandable. We run a very long event. It's not the traditional hour event that you usually see in virtual settings. So I completely understand. And then for our panel conversations, I keep them short. It's 45 minutes to an hour, and it's led by a moderator, and the moderator is very exact in how they ask the questions and how they keep the panel moving.
We have a really thoughtful question here from Raja Krishnan. How do you keep the spirit of the community alive? With people leaving and joining, how do you manage the transitions in and out? How do you innovate to keep the community engaged?
Again, I think it's really through, we are a transient community, right? Like we have a massive number of members, but those members have come and gone and left and traveled the world. And it's really just about making sure that at the center of what we're doing remains the same. It's all about connecting people, creating access, and showing off amazing technology. And then as an organization, it's really about making sure that we're keeping focused on keeping as many access points open as possible.
That's a very thoughtful response. We're running a little towards the end here, but I wanted to lob one question in your direction from me, which is one more question. I'm going to steal one back. When I spoke to you earlier, I was really blown away by the passion, the commitment you had for the companies, the projects that you feature in the New York Tech Meetup. Are there any that you'd like to highlight here today as ones that you've been particularly proud that you're able to give a platform to, or impressed with the work that they're doing?
There's so many. I mean, the meetup, the New York Tech Meetup is a place for amazing companies to come and demo. Our history is filled with, you know, companies like Tumblr and Foursquare and Shutterstock and Zola, Livestream. They've all demoed on our stage. We're very lucky to have that kind of pedigree. Ones that have demoed in the past couple of months, before the pandemic. Wanted is one, helping companies, helping job seekers find jobs with salary being the first lens. They actually pivoted and created a product called Switch to help startups who had to lay off employees during the pandemic find opportunities for their staff at other startups. So I love that story of creating an employee first kind of product and then being able to pivot it to support startups within the ecosystem during such a crazy time. The founder Jean is amazing. Coda is a work productivity tool that's amazing. They're doing great things. Let's see. I want to highlight some of the immigrant founder ones that we had. Let me see if I can find them really quickly. Track Racks was for the fashion industry and sampling. Seago, oh my gosh, they're amazing. He's created an entire insurance platform for the Latinx community. Really phenomenal. Sports High, really doing amazing stuff. Like I'm so lucky in the fact that I get to see so much amazing technology. I wish I want them all to be successful.
Yeah, I'm going to pivot back here to a couple of other questions. I'm getting pressure from my end to keep it going because the questions are so good and there's so much out there to talk about. James Gazetta asked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I of course moved my laptop for this and it unplugged, so I don't want to run out of battery.
Yeah, that's been a big aspect of sort of the work from home challenge, I guess, is getting the equipment set up right, at least for me.
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. James Gazetta asked, are there other New York Tech Meetup extensions elsewhere? Is there a West Coast version elsewhere in the world?
The funny story is that it's one of the oldest meetups, and so when I started doing as much research as I could, and there's a tech meetup in almost every city in the world, and a lot of those meetups, the organizers and the founders of those meetups said that they were inspired by New York Tech Meetup, and we do not have chaptering, we do not organize in that way, but a number of meetup organizers have said that they were inspired by the New York Tech Meetup.
It's a bit of a challenge for the Meetup platform more broadly, right? Because we do have these sort of very, very federated networks. We have meetups all over the world in different cities with broadly similar topics, but it's been difficult for them to sort of stitch together and build some commonality. And that, you know, wasn't as much of an issue for us a year ago, but it's definitely something we're thinking a lot harder about now. So if anyone out there has feedback, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be a part of a group that Scott brought together, meetup organizers from across the country, and went to the White House during the Obama administration many years ago. And it was really a phenomenal experience to get to meet. They were specifically tech meetup organizers, and it was really amazing to see how the platform has fostered this amazing group of entrepreneurs, communities around the world, and to get to meet a lot of those organizers was very, very special, and I'm really inspiring to myself.
Let's see. So another question. This is from Peter. What changes do you see coming in the sort of the VC angel crowdfunding area that might improve diversity in founders who get funded? Do you see that improving over time?
I think it's really interesting. I think we're at this inflection point, and you know, I've been pushing to have that exact conversation for a long time, and it's been encouraging to see so many specialized funds pop up that were focused on this, and VC firms that are starting to create their entire portfolios. Backstage Capital, for example, betting on underrepresented and underestimated individuals. I think that that's really key to Arlen's success, and such an inspirational story, such an amazing story, and just makes sense. I think it will change. I think I've seen a lot of these VC firms make commitments, and a lot of the funds make commitments. We'll see if they follow through. I think they're going to be held to a higher standard now than they were before, and I'm hopeful that continues. That conversation was already happening here in New York. We were already pushing in a lot of those ways, diversity, equity, inclusion. I think because of the groundwork that we as a community have laid is at the center of the New York tech ecosystem, and programs like Samsung Next and Techstars and Founder Institute. I'm lucky enough to be a part of some of these networks, and to see those conversations shift over time and see the types of founders that they're willing to back is really quite amazing. I still think we have a very long way to go, and I think part of the issue is representation. I can speak personally that when I'm looking for founders of a certain group, or I put out a general call for application, it goes beyond just me getting those applicants and putting them on stage. I have to do a ton of legwork to uncover underrepresented founders, to uncover women founders, to uncover, and it's not for because they don't exist. It's just that they're not plugged into this larger network, and that's exactly what we're trying to rectify, is getting them plugged into this larger network so that everyone who's plugged in sees them, and that's the goal. I think that we are going to see a change. It's going to take some time, and we are going to have to hold people accountable for what they say.
Yeah, I strongly agree. It's hard to feel hopeful, right now, I think, but I'm hoping that, in sort of in the same way that COVID has accelerated some of the existing tech trends towards more online interaction, online work. Perhaps the current moment politically will have accelerated the trend towards more diversity, more equity, more inclusion in the tech market, in funding. And yes, I certainly do hope that we hold ourselves as a community to higher standards here.
Yeah, and that's my ask for the community at large. If you need introductions or information or understanding, I'm lucky enough to be in an ecosystem that's super connected, and if I can't answer your question, I know somebody who can, and I think that that's really it shows the power of the network, right? That's unlocking that power for everyone is another one of our goals.
All right, super quick question, one more before we break. I think someone asked, can you list some of the podcasts that have been most helpful to you? What are the ones that you like most?
Oh my gosh. I'm not ready for that question. All of the NPR stuff. I listen to NPR all the time. I love Code Switch. That's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to around that specifically is around diversity, equity issues. Nancy by NPR is another one about LGBTQ issues. Tech News Daily, I listened to for a very long time. I haven't gone to it. I have to say that my tech listening has stopped for a moment because I've been consuming mostly social and political podcasts lately. But I'm trying. Kara Swisher, Recode, Decode is amazing. I love anything that Kara Swisher does. I just got to see her put on a panel at Lesbians in Tech, and love. But there's so much out there. Code Newbies was started by Saran, and she actually was our first developer in residence at New York Tech Meetup from Flatiron School. So I've gotten to see her journey over time, and the podcast series that she created, phenomenal. And then what's the other one? There's another one. Anything that Anthony Frazier does is phenomenal. And then Georgie, GSD with Georgie is Georgie Ann Gettin McCoy is an ally, a friend, a badass entrepreneur. GSD stands for Get Shit Done, and she definitely does. She's one of my favorite people in the tech community here in New York City, and like just a powerhouse.
That's a great list. A bunch of people asked if we could reshare the recommendations for online event hosting. I think you rattled off a few earlier, so we're going to go back and check in on those, and we'll reshare it out to the group afterwards. So I'm not going to answer those right now. Also, thank you to everyone who asked a meetup specific question. We really wanted to put the spotlight on Andy and on New York Tech today. So we're going to have future events, if you're curious, that'll speak more to the platform. I apparently volunteered to host one on Meetup's replatforming effort in our tech stack, which was maybe a bad idea with the benefit of hindsight, but that's coming up soon as well. I want to thank you, Andy, so much for spending time with us today. I'm sorry, everyone, for being a little over time here, but I had so much fun, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And have a lovely day, everyone, whether it's 3 p.m. where you are, which is, or sorry, 4 p.m., or I think for some of you it's 1:30 a.m. or 7 a.m. out in Australia. I cannot believe how many people came and joined us from all over the world. Thank you all so much, and have a lovely day, night, afternoon, whatever.